There is a huge focus thereby on the MSME sector, yeah, which is the the small scale and the micro scale industries. The government really wants to do good there because they are the real employment generator. And we have something called a huge thrust on Make in India program. So if you think 5 years term or a 10 years term, I think the big skill which will be required is going to be planning. So we are going to see a talent pool requirement of people who are more into thinking skills rather than typically and executionary skills. We are at a $3.7 trillion economy, out of which about 30% is with 4 states. Yeah. So if you have Maharashtra and Gujarat in the west, and you've got Tamil Nadu and Andhra in the south. Yeah. Now, if you see a warehouse in Europe, the entire warehouse would be worked up by about 3-4 people. Yeah. The same thing in India would be about 20. Now, to imagine in your mind that I need to travel that journey from 3 to 20, unless you see it, you won't believe it. So I think that's an important transition or a journey one has to make in supply chain. Are you spending 5% of your salary on your own development? Yeah. If the answer is yes, then definitely demand something from the organization and from the larger ecosystem. If the answer is no, then I would say you're not, yourself not interested in it. And you as an expert can go in and help, be it talent acquisition and recruitment, be it laying the kind of infrastructure landscape, be it kind of putting up the factories, putting up the right warehouse, the designing, the execution.
Hello and welcome to another podcast on my channel. And today we will talk about how to find supply chain jobs in one of the largest markets in the world. I'm talking about a country which has the largest population in the world and whose GDP has been growing at about 6% year on year. Of course, I'm talking about India. And I wanted to do this podcast for a while now because I get a lot of questions from my viewers and followers who are based in India and who are trying to build a career in supply chain in that market. And to talk about that, I don't think there would be anyone better than my guest, who has got about 30 years of experience in the supply chain industry in India. And he has worked in world class companies like Diageo, PepsiCo, and Mars. So without further ado, I would like to welcome my friend Gaurav Garg. Hi, Gaurav. How are you?
Hey, hi, Jamil. Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot for coming, Gaurav. And Gaurav, I mean, I've given a very quick 10-second overview about your career journey,
Yeah.
but why don't you tell in your own words to my viewers on how has your supply chain experience been, and tell us a little bit about your career journey yourself.
Yeah, sure. So, so hi everyone there in India and across the globe. I know Jamil's following is everywhere, and India is a market of interest. So, I've been associated with supply chain for many years, and in fact, I worked with sales supply chain projects, multiple functions and multiple organizations, as Jamil said. And supply chain cuts through everywhere. Without supply chain, it's kind of the nerve center. So being in planning, being in logistics, being in export, so various stages of the supply chain. And now I do my own consultancy after I kind of did rounds with various companies. And it's very exciting times in supply chain in India, and things are looking better and bigger as we speak, and we'll talk more about it as we go through the conversation. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Gaurav. And so, Gaurav, I know like India is a huge market, and there is not only like these multinationals who are operating there in the consumer goods industry, but even the local manufacturing industry is super strong. And even beyond CPGs, I'm sure the supply chain industry kind of spreads across multiple industries. So, my first question to you was, which industries are thriving in India more than others, and where people who are like fresh graduates or who are just starting to build their careers in supply chain, they should be targeting more than others?
Yeah. So, I mean, as you've said, India is a big country. It's 20% of the population, and we have the economic as well as the demographic dividend in terms of number of people who are into the job market, and government also recognizes that, and there is a huge focus thereby on the MSME sector, which is the small scale and the micro scale industries. The government really wants to do good there because they are the real employment generator. They cater to smaller niches, they cater to smaller markets, and they can attract people from nearby to work in them. So MSME has been a big thrust of the government, not only in terms of land acquisition and other finances, but also in terms of government trying to buy from these places for their own projects. So MSME is one big sector which is there. Now, lately, the China plus one strategy is being adopted by many different countries and by many industries. So that's a factor which is playing across, electronics being one big one and chemicals being another big one. So the dependency on China for various reasons, not only geopolitical, but generally, I think people realized after COVID that all the eggs in one basket cannot be there. So it's a classic supply chain thing that you kind of divide your risk. So I think China plus one is giving us a big fillip. And the recent, geopolitical disturbance in Bangladesh has led to a lot of interest in textile as well. So that is another area which is kind of being looked at. India largely has been agricultural and services driven, and there is a huge push for the government to make it manufacturing driven, and we have something called a huge thrust on Make in India program, which the Prime Minister has been pushing, that you have Make in India products and have lesser dependency on imports. And a top initiative in this direction has been in the defense sector. So a lot of defense manufacturing is now getting indigenized. So I think multiple sectors, but the big ones being, defense, the whole thing around chemicals and electronics, and of course the textiles to be the latest one.
Excellent. So tell me something, Gaurav. So, I mean, lots of different industries, and of course, I mean, the China plus one is a huge thing these days. One question I wanted to ask is, because a lot of the viewership on my channel is about middle career professionals, youngsters trying to build a career. When you look at the talent out there, and it's great to talk to you as well, because you not only have a lot of experience in the industry, but you are also doing consulting. India, of course, is known worldwide for its tech talent, right? No matter where you go in the world, Indian tech companies, tech CEOs are all over the place. But when it comes to supply chain talent, where do you see gaps, and where would you recommend people should build their skill set?
So I think let us answer this question in the realm of what's going to happen in 5 years' time. It's not today, but how things will pan out. So if you think 5 years term or a 10 years term, I think the big skill which will be required is going to be planning. Planning from a couple of standpoints. One is, of course, the growth rate of 7% compounded every year is not a small amount. It's very different from, let's say, Europe growing at 1% or 2%, where you can have historical data and just copy paste and do the planning. Here you've got a lot of diversity, and in that diversity are growing at 7%. So planning skill is one big thing which supply chain professionals need to have, and they need to dial that up tremendously. At the same time, when we talk of typical logistics, as the digitization is going to improve there, adoption of digitization is going to improve, the dependency on jobs related to coordination and tying up the loose ends, all this is going to go away or substantially reduce. So we are going to see a talent pool requirement of people who are more into thinking skills rather than typically an executionary skills. So that is a big shift which I see which is going to happen. If we see a lot of jobs today, and if you compare any organization, Probably the planning at very many organizations is with finance, yeah, and then slightly bigger organization, then you have planning sitting into one particular function, and then very large organization where you have SNOPs and all, you've got demand and supply kind of separated out. But that's really the route which I see a lot of professionals should work on and try to improve their skills.
Great. Yeah, and I'm so glad you mentioned two of my favorite topics, right? One is planning because I mean, maybe, 'cause I've done planning for most of my life, so I'm kind of emotionally attached. I always mention
Yeah,
this, right? And I've made a lot of
yeah.
content on this. But I think one of the other things which you really mentioned, I want to kind of, stress a bit more on, Gaurav,
Mm.
is that a lot of this is something which I always also highlight, especially people who are working in very entry level, I would say, coordination or data entry kind of
Yeah,
job. Those jobs, their days are numbered now, right? Like, because
that is a number. Yeah,
with the AI technologies and all of these things coming out,
yeah,
you will not need in the next few years people who can just
yeah.
enter data and all of that. So people need to have those jobs which have more value add. So they need to be friends with technology, especially with AI.
Correct.
And then at the same time, as you grow further, those thinking skills, those planning skills
Yeah,
become very, very important.
yeah.
So,
So the
go ahead.
reason I'd like to highlight why people still don't look at it is because still the adoption is less, and adoption is less because of two factors. Of course, there's a learning curve involved, and there is a budget to be allocated to really put in monies behind this. Now, in a scenario like India, where things are still in a growth phase, supply chain will always be looked at as a cost center. It's not a revenue driver. Yeah. So when you have a cost center and you put a you put a proposal in front of an MD and say that, hey, I want to invest like $500,000 to kind of digitize and automate, he'll say, what is the cost benefit analysis? Why shouldn't I put it in advertising and get more revenue? And that's a classic debate which happens in a management team. Yeah. And that's why it starts taking a backseat. Now, when that barrier to entry reduces, when the costs are more affordable, I think we'll suddenly see a huge shift which is happening into adoption. And when that adoption happens, people who don't have skills of planning won't be able to adapt themselves to the new ways of working.
Right. Excellent. Yeah. And then one more question I wanted to ask you, Gaurav, with this, a lot of focus coming into the Indian market, how is the job spread? Because India is a huge country, right? Like every city is like a
Yeah,
country of its own.
yeah.
So are the jobs more like in the Mumbais and Delhis of the world, or they are more spread out? Like in terms of like supply chain job centers, like what would be like the top three or top five job centers for supply
Yeah,
chain jobs?
yeah. So let's look at it this way. It's an easy answer because we are at a $3.7 trillion economy, out of which about 30% is with four states. Yeah. So if you have Maharashtra and Gujarat in the west, and you've got Tamil Nadu and Andhra in the south. Yeah. And the fifth one being UP, which is a very popular state. So if I take these five states put together, we are talking about 35% of the economy. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. There is affluence everywhere across the country, and at the same time, there is development stage as well. So opportunities are everywhere. Uh, if we look at the traditional cut of warehousing, logistics, etc., India implemented GST a couple of years back. So the number of warehouses which used to be about 20, 25 have reduced to now 8, 9, 10, depending upon the size of the company. So those centers are now limited, and they are geographically balancing the entire country. Yeah. So it need not be in a particular state, but it would be at a particular distance to your factory to manage the cost and kind of optimize. But opportunities are there everywhere. Yeah, it is not limited. Now, when we talk of a planning cut of a job would obviously be in factories and would be in head offices. But when we talk of coordination or execution level jobs, they would be at many different places. Yeah. But if one were to say, where is my chance of getting the job higher? Yes, it would be these five states where the GDP is much higher.
Right. Now, one of the trends which we have seen for decades and decades, and this is not just India, like South Asia in general, right? There is a massive, like whenever you graduate or you've got a degree, like the first instinct is to find an opportunity to get out of the country. So I wanted to ask you, like with us, with so much development going on in India itself, at least in the tech sector now, I'm beginning to see that the desire to leave the country and come to the US, it's not as high as it used to be, because there's a lot of, like there are a lot of great tech jobs in India itself. Do you see that trend happening in supply chain as well, like over the next 5 years, as you mentioned about a number of initiatives government is taking itself? What would your advice be to youngsters who have this default kind of mindset that, oh, I need to just get out of the country, right? Because I think that's changing, isn't that true?
Yeah, it is. It is definitely changing. I mean, you have people who are getting education there and coming back. That is one part. You have people who are like mid-career who are coming back. The question is that are your aspirations getting met or not? Yeah. Luckily, supply chain jobs are geography neutral, right? So if you're good at planning, you're good at planning. Yeah. You. It is not that you're good at planning in India and you're not good at planning in US. So it's a very transferable skill. Yeah. Unlike, let's say, a sales guy who's has to have a very different kind of a customer connect. He needs to understand the culture and lots of other nuances are there. So his skills may not be as easily transferable. But for a supply chain guy, that's a big advantage. Whether the truck remains a truck, the box remains a box, the shipment remains a shipment, and there are so many similarities. And likewise in manufacturing. Yeah. So I think the advice I would give is that focus on your education. Now, if for the reason of education you're going out, I mean, that's a choice you have to make. Yeah, if you can afford it and you get better education than some of the places you're able to get admission in India, definitely do that. Yeah, initial experiences also could be very good. Yeah, so let me give you an example. So let's say one has to work in a factory of the same company in US and Europe and India. Yeah, the kind of experience on the same product is going to be very different. Yeah, because the level of digitization and automation is going to be very different. Now, if you see a warehouse in Europe, the entire warehouse would be worked up by about 3 4 people. Yeah, the same thing in India would be about 20. Now, to imagine in your mind that I need to travel that journey from 3 to 20, unless you see it, you won't believe it. So I think that's an important transition or a journey one has to make in supply chain. Yeah, to visualize, to be able to see the benefit of something, to be able to see how things are going to move forward. uh, and of course, even in planning, so collaborative planning is of a very different level in much more matured economies than in developing economies. So that is another area. So I think it's very good for education, educational choice, and initial experience choice. But then after that, you have a big landscape in India to do. Of course, at 7% growth, you have a lot more opportunities to do.
In terms of talent development, Gaurav, do you think there is enough time and energy spent in the Indian market on people skills? Because a lot of times, I mean, everybody tends to focus on the technical skills and how to do the stuff. But as you grow in your career, right, you become a middle manager and then a director and so on, your people management, your leadership skills become very, very important. Do you think there is enough happening in the Indian market to build talent? And if someone is watching this podcast who is like a junior manager aspiring to become a more senior manager, what are the avenues to
Yeah.
build leadership skills uh, in India?
So I think one of the great companies I work for and you work in, I think they had this that it's your own responsibility. So I ask these same people, are you spending 5% of your salary on your own development? Yeah. If the answer is yes, then definitely demand something from the organization and from the larger ecosystem. If the answer is no, then I would say you're not, yourself not interested in your development. You're waiting for somebody to do it for you, which is not going to happen. Yeah. So avenues are many, but you have to show your interest. Now today we have a lot of these websites, whether it's Unacademy or various others, where you have a lot of these courses which are free of cost. Yeah, one can upgrade. You have the whole programs from a lot of US universities which are freely available. You can upgrade and apply. But many of the times, if your intent is to just take a certificate and show it on LinkedIn, it doesn't work. So authenticity in development is very much required. Yeah, I don't think there is a dearth of opportunities, and you can work along with your job. You don't need a formal education. You don't need a break in your careers to do that.
Great. And then I know you are on your own like entrepreneurship journey right now, Gaurav. Like so,
Yeah,
for in supply chain in general in India, tell us a little bit about the entrepreneurship landscape. Like so, people who want to break out of a 9 to 5 and build their own business around this.
yeah,
What opportunities exist? Because like if the small and medium scale industry is thriving, that's a great sign. But how do you see
yeah.
this evolving for supply chain professionals?
Yeah. So I think there is a lot of need for people, to streamline their processes. So the whole value stream process, I think that's a great place one can value add, and kind of help people optimize. The efficiency route is there, where a lot of industries are not on, or a lot of companies are not on. So I think that is one area one can do. I think the other big area is the whole setup. So imagine the 7% growth is happening how? There's a lot of new stuff which is coming up. So new warehouses, new factories, new recruitment, and a lot of new stuff. Yeah. So that's an area where, you're starting from scratch. The Nobody knows exactly what to do, and you as an expert can go in and help, be it talent acquisition and recruitment, be it laying the kind of infrastructure landscape, be it kind of putting up the factories, putting up the right warehouse, the designing, the execution. So there's a huge area which is there. I think the third big area is that everybody is wanting to go into digitization. Yeah. So the software side and its adoption and training, I think that is one big area. And finally, a emerging area is around the automation side. So where it always conflicts with the investment really there. But I mean, that is an area which is definitely going to shoot up. So a lot of things are happening. I mean, the country is trying to become new, and new in terms of renovations also and innovations also. So I think there is enough there. Yeah. Really.
Yeah, and then coming back to the job searching process itself, Gaurav, how easy it is? Like how I mean, the HR departments, how mature are they? So, for instance, if I apply for a job, how much of a difference does it make? And of course, I'm sure if you are applying for a multinational company like Mars or Pepsi, like they have got
Yeah.
very standardized global systems. But some of in
Yeah.
some of these local companies or kind of existing players, how easy it is to get your resume through the process and get at least to the interview table.
Yeah, it's not easy. Yeah, it's not easy because there is a sheer number game. So one, if you advertise something, just everybody tends to apply. Yeah, and the great value addition point is that how do you, out of those 1,000 applications, get those 10 applications to the hiring manager, or probably 10 to the HR and 3 to the hiring manager, and he makes that selection. So I think if I today happen to advertise the position, even people with non-relevant experience will just start applying. Everybody just starts to apply, and in the hope that okay, we might get it. Yeah, and if you look at from their side, it might be true. They're trying their luck. So I think while a lot of these sites put AI tools etc. to filter out the applications, but there is a lot to be done in that area. Yeah. So today, large amounts of job get through references. So if I know somebody, I refer somebody, and he gets an interview, somebody likes it, you make it happen. Yeah. And the consultants have to play a great role. I mean, the HR consultants or the consultancy companies, they should play that great role. So many organizations which I consult with, they have this challenge that you tell a consultant something, He gives the entire bunch to you, that here are 50 emails which have come. Have a look. Yeah. And that's where everything starts to drop. Yeah. So there is need to work there.
Yeah, it's not easy, right? Of course, because like you said, everybody wants to try their luck. And then this is the big challenge, right? How do candidates stand out in the process? Because
Yeah.
sometimes,
Yeah.
the AI tools are there, but of course, they are not perfect. But at the same
Correct.
time, this is also like a frustration point for a lot of good quality
Yeah.
candidates because
True.
they don't make
True.
their way through the process,
True.
right? And that's where the frustration kicks in. But
Yeah.
I think
Mhm.
one thing which you mentioned is that be genuine. Don't try to. I think this is one advice I give even in my coaching calls all the time, that don't try to fudge your examples, don't try to fudge, because
Yeah.
it will take an experienced recruiter 2 minutes to find out whether you are lying or whether you're not. So just don't try to fool yourself and the recruiter, because you won't succeed. And then of course, I think the challenge is always going to be that it's a huge market, lots of people applying for similar jobs. So standing out, I think one of the key things will be to stay genuine. Now, towards the end, Gaurav, one question I always ask whenever I invite like experienced professional like yourself is, what would you tell your 25-year-old self, right? So if you had to go back in time, what would be the advice that you would give to yourself based on your experience?
I think if I have to reflect back, an opportunity which one should have created for oneself would have been to do a lot more data heavy decision making. One did a lot of decision making at every step, but did one really make all the effort required to collect that data or generate that data and really, delve deep into it, use some mathematical tools to really stress test your decision, and then take a decision. So I think that habit, if it would have been built and compounded over a period of time, it would have been a great asset. Yeah. So I think that's what I would say, that we all say that, okay, we study in colleges and then we say, okay, what's the use of what we studied? Never gets applied. Yeah, you would have heard that. Yeah. Okay, I studied this subject but never applied it. It's not true. We don't apply it because we just go with the flow and we don't pause and we don't reflect. So I think that's what one should have done, or I should have done, as an advice I would give to my 25-year-old self. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, and I think your advice reminds me of something. Yeah, because we all study like advanced probability, calculus, like all that fancy stuff. But then
Yeah.
everybody says that I studied all those complex things, but then in the end, when I
Yeah.
started my supply chain job, I was using Excel and Excel formulas. Well, that is true to a large extent. But now, as I'm even like learning myself, some of the new technologies out there, like those elementary or let's say high school calculus books or
Yeah.
statistical books are coming back. Because if you look at I was doing recently a course on R and Python and like some of the machine learning
Yeah.
I to understand how it works. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm working on a project where there are a bunch of data analysts who are doing this for me, but I was just inquisitive, like how it
Yeah.
works. And it brings back all those elementary mathematical concepts
Correct.
back to life.
Yeah.
So this is sometimes a misconception that I studied all this, but I'm not putting it
Yeah.
to use. Everything is useful, but there's a time and space for it. Sometimes we just
Yeah.
get carried away by that. I think also to build on your point, I would also want to stress on another key advice that keeps coming back in these interviews is, especially when you are a young supply chain professional, try to do as much operational work as possible. Because get your hands dirty, go in a warehouse, go and stand at a port
Yeah.
and see how the containers are being cleared, or go and work in a factory and just get your hands dirty with the manufacturing operation. Because one of the trends I see nowadays is that, and it's probably not nowadays, it's always been the case, that as soon as you start your first job and you do a couple of years, everybody wants to sit down in an office environment, have their nice
Yeah.
fancy laptop in their cubicle. That's not where the learning in supply chain happens, right? It's a very experiential industry. That is why the importance, I mean, the degrees are definitely important. You need 16 years of education to do almost anything today, but it's not a degree where if you have a certain, you're not becoming a dentist, for example, right? So you need to have this
Yeah.
particular
Yeah.
field because supply chain is super experiential. So the more you can learn, more you can get your hands dirty.
Yeah.
I think that is very, very important, because as you will grow, those days which you have spent in operations, that you will always leverage them, because you can learn something from there and apply it in your
Yeah,
personal.
completely agree. I think for any job, you have to pick up the ropes, and you have to then tie the knot, and then kind of take it from there. So supply chain starts with the fact that how do you handle a situation that your shipment has got delayed at the port. Now what do I do? Okay, so and now it affects the entire supply chain till the customer, and how do I handle that? Or I have the shipment, but the customer has delayed it, or kind of there are issues around it, and labor hasn't come, and all those sorts of things which keep on happening. So I think those develop your responses, and how do you develop your response, your instinct? And when at 10 years later, when you're sitting in the office and you have to take a call and the team is there and probably you don't have enough data, that's the wisdom which comes handy, that okay, this is how you have to do it. So it's very important skill to have. Completely agree. Yeah.
Absolutely. Excellent. No, thanks a lot once again for your time, Gaurav. I think this was a fantastic session. I'm sure the viewers are going to get a lot of value out of this, especially the ones who are looking for a job in India and they're trying to build their career in this fantastic industry. So thanks a
Yeah.
lot once again for sharing your valuable time and experience with us. And
Thanks, Emil. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
thanks a lot. All right.
Take
Take care,
care.
Gaurav.
Bye-bye. Bye.